And welcome to this edition of the Native News Update on this Tuesday, December 20th. I'm your host for today's program, Paul DeMain, and today we're going to go to Indiana and talk with an old friend, Potawatomi Johnny Flynn, an educator, talk a little bit about the holiday seasons, St. Nick, Jesus, and traditions of Native communities. Johnny Flynn, thank you for joining with us on the Native News Update today. Headed into the holiday seasons here in the next few days, and we just mentioned to me that great big blizzard down in Colorado, Texas, Kansas, northern Wisconsin, brown. We got white rabbits running all over the brown woods, and you can see them. They're very vulnerable to the eagles and the owls and all that. But give me an opening from Hoosier Company. Tell us who you are, and we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on during this time of the year.
Yeah, I'm an assistant professor of religious studies at IUPUI and director of American Indian programs. And we're on break right now, and writing as much as I can.
And you're not freezing your butt off down there, are you?
Oh, it's raining here. And we're supposed to get some snow Christmas Eve, but other than that, we hadn't had any snow at all this year. So last year we got 10, 12 inches, but this year none.
None.
Global,
What's that?
global warming.
Maybe people are going to wake up one of these days and realize what's odd about it is we've got these storms way down south. Huge blizzards, people passing away, people who are not used to dealing with that kind of weather. And up here, everyone's got their snowshoes out, their skis, their snowmobile. If you're an ice skater or a hockey player, it is beautiful. You want to go out on the Chippewa Floge down here, you got thousands of acres of ice, about 6 to 8 inches thick now, and it is your world, ice skate. What do people talk about in Indian country, Potawatomi country, and elsewhere when we talk about holiday seasons? Let's get into the topic for today. Tell me what's on your mind.
Well, you got to remember that America, when the Pilgrims came here, did not celebrate Christmas at all. And Christmas did not become an official holiday in the United States until 1870. And so Christmas was not a time that Indian people adopted until the beginning of the 20th century. And once they adopted it, it became a time, because it's around winter solstice, it became a time of family and feasting and getting together and the midwinter ceremonies that many people do. As you know, the Meday do it, and a lot of other tribes do midwinter ceremonies. We tried to adopt them to the holidays that were imposed on us.
Let's talk a little bit about that solstice period. Around this time in northern Wisconsin, amongst several tribal tribes, there are people who are having winter drum dance, feasts, Thanksgivings, and my recollection is a lot of tribal indigenous societies really celebrated what they call the coming back of the sun. That point around the 20th, 21st, when, according to their charts, there was a rebirth of the next cycle of the next year. What do you hear about that in your traditional societies and readings?
Well, you got to remember that midwinter is a time when you know how much food you have to last until the spring foods come in. And so it was a time all over the world, all over the northern hemisphere, where people got together and decided how to redistribute the food that they had to maximize the number of people that are going to survive the winter. And so the tradition of gift giving at this time was actually a time of, the widow woman down the street with 6 kids doesn't have enough food to last for the rest of the winter. So instead of just giving it to her, they make a formal gift-giving non-charitable contribution to the family. And so all over the world, especially in Indian country, this was a time when you took care of the poor and made sure that everybody made it through the winter with as much food as they needed. And so whenever the Christmas holiday was imposed on us, Thanksgiving, um, these celebrations were familiar to us. So when we embrace them as Indian people, we're not embracing necessarily a new religion, new ceremonies, but rather taking the Christian tradition and adding it to our repertoire of religious ideas.
Right. You said that we kind of embrace that. I've heard stories that it's both ways. That the birth of Christ didn't occur around the 25th of December. We somehow combine that into the celebration. That Saint Nicholas was some good guy who handed out gifts in England. That's been incorporated into parts of this for native children or for children worldwide. Some people try to make it a kind of a child's fantasy during that period: food, family, and gifts. How does the birth of Christ and Saint Nicholas, how has it been fit into our celebrations?
Well, I share with you a story. In the 1930s, my great grandfather got a little bit of oil money. It was during the Depression. He got a little bit of oil money, so he went to town, bought some gifts, and rented a Santa suit. And during this period of time, the Klan was pretty active in Oklahoma. So they were, keeping an eye out for people sneaking up on the house at night. So my grandpa with the kids, including my mother, were all in their cabin, and they hear somebody crunching across the snow, and he looks outside and he doesn't recognize who it is. And so when he comes to the door, he knocks on the door, and my grandpa jerked the door open and stuck a 20-gauge shotgun in Santa's belly. It was his dad.
Welcome to the household, Santa.
Yeah, my mother said, "Dad, don't shoot Santa." So, we, first of all, Jesus, if he was born at all, was born probably in the spring, because shepherds were not in the hills in wintertime. There was just no grazing. And that's part of the story. It wasn't until the 4th century AD that the Christians who were standing around sucking their thumb while the Romans were celebrating Sol Invictus, the invincible sun, and they began to say that Jesus was born on the 25th of December. If you know how it works, the sun stays in its position from the 21st to the 24th, and then the 25th it begins its journey back to the north. So the sun is reborn, S-U-N, and the Christians adopted it as the sun is born, S-O-N. And it became an integral part of Christian Catholic tradition. Mm-hmm. The Protestants realized the pagan origins of it, and so when they came to America, as I said, they didn't even celebrate. In fact, the first Christmas here in the United States, the Puritans worked all day building a new house for someone, so they more or less didn't celebrate Christmas here. You got Saint Nick is actually an old Greek saint.
Greek?
It started out as a Greek saint. There's no evidence that he really existed, and he may be a composite of several different people. But when it went north in Norway and Sweden, they had a tradition of their high god Odin traveling across the sky with an 8-legged horse.
Eight-legged horse.
Yeah, okay. 8-legged horse.
Okay.
And he would come and drop presents or stuff down the chimney, and they would put their shoes out and leave a carrot for some oats for the horse, and Odin would take the carrot and the oats and fill their shoes with candy and sweets. And that's where, of course, where the tradition of the stockings come from. So all of these traditions that make up the so-called Christian Christmas are all pagan.
Yeah, the Yuletide Christmas tree came out of another such practice by European pagan tribes?
Yeah, Northern European, basically. You got to remember that up there where you're at, Wisconsin, North Dakota, where a lot of the Norwegian folks or the Northern European folks settled, is where our traditions of Christmas here in America came from. Santa, of course, comes from an early poem, 1823 or something. Thomas Nast, I think it was, that wrote a poem the night before Christmas, and then, of course, there were later poems. And by the end of the 19th century, 1800s, Santa had been transformed from Odin to what we now know as Santa Claus. In the 1920s, and Coca-Cola picked up the tradition. They liked it because it was red and white, which of course was the colors of Coca-Cola. And so it's less than 100 years that the traditions that we now celebrate as Christmas have been around.
Constant complaining, I guess, from people who believe in it and don't believe in it, that it's a little bit over commercialized nowadays.
Well, again, what it is, and the whole tradition of gift giving, and this is why Indian people picked it up so quickly, whether it was imposed or they embraced it on their own, is a redistribution of wealth in the middle of winter to make sure that people survive. You got your into the fall, you know how much food you have to last. And midwinter is when you kind of reassess where you are. And people who need food then are given food, but not in a charitable way, in a gift-giving way.
Yeah.
And when I grew up, I got underwear, socks, and shirts. That's what I got. And an orange in my sock.
Is there any truth to this fable I once heard about Potawatomis accidentally shooting Santa's sleigh out of the sky by an errant fireball?
I think those were Chippewas that did that. No, like I said, my grandpa almost shot Santa. So.
Well, let's do this. If I ever come visit during Christmas Day, you can put on a reindeer steak and we'll enjoy that together. One last minute to go. Any last minute to tell people out there during this holiday seasons?
Well, happy holidays to everyone. And Indian people embrace things that make sense. And embracing the holidays, embracing this time of the year. You've been in Indian households over Christmas, and you know how it is. And it's about feasting, friendship, and family. And so, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everyone.
Thank you much, and have a happy holidays for your family as well. We hope you stay warm.
Okay. Bye, Paul.
Bye-bye. And that is another roundup of news from Indian Country. On this edition of the Native News Update, join with us this week when we talk with some other tribal people about the holidays and tribal Christmas in our communities.